I've been living in Japan unofficially 2 years, officially a year and a half. It was a very difficult choice because basically I sacrificed my entire career to come here. I don't know if it's the right choice, but when I'm here, I feel very happy. Like my stress level is, and that was a difficult choice to make. Career versus happiness. I chose happiness.
What's happening in the music?
Are you practicing by yourself?
I almost never play. Actually, really, I almost never touch my instruments, which is a choice.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that choice. I go to jam sessions every now and then just to maintain a little bit the repertoire.
Gypsy jazz?
No, straight ahead jazz, like regular jazz. Sometimes for social reasons, I'll go to the Gypsy Jazz jam session in Tokyo. And that's it. Otherwise, and of course for YouTube, I do a lot of YouTube. So that's the only reason I'll ever touch an instrument these days.
Yeah.
Which is, I know it seems a little bit sad, but I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, during the pandemic, what happened is every year I spend my winters in Asia, usually in Taiwan,
Yeah.
but I fell in love with Japan. So while I was in Taiwan, I would also come to Japan, so kind of like half-half.
Yeah.
So in December of 2019, I was in Japan. And then at the end of February 24th, I remember the exact date, February 24th, I went to Taiwan for the Taipei Gypsy Jazz Festival. Upon arrival, everything was going like chaotically. Everything was just going downhill, and the festival got cancelled. And within a few weeks, my return flight got cancelled. Everything got cancelled. So I ended up being stuck in Taiwan for 2 years, just a bit over 2 years. So as soon as they announced that they were going to open the borders, I left. It was the first thing I did. I don't have the dreams that I used to have when I was younger of kind of wanting to be great or whatever.
Well, maybe you came close to what you wanted to be and also surpassed that goal, kind of, because you became somebody you never could invent. Now, you didn't think of, I want to be the Denis Chang that you are now, because you had no idea that something like that exists.
Yeah, okay, in that sense, yeah, it's true.
So you already have a feeling of accomplishment and fulfillment, maybe, and you're still young and full of energy, and you can explore more.
Japanese is very similar to Gypsy Jazz. On the surface, when you listen to Gypsy Jazz, of course, you hear the notes, you hear the melodies, and as a musician, you can maybe learn like the basic theory, the scales, and everything. But there is an entire culture behind it, and from that's how when you put on a recording, I can tell who's a gypsy and who's not a gypsy, and maybe from which area of they're from. They're Dutch, they're French, or maybe even German.
ATM? ATM やったらもうそこまっすぐ行ったらローソンの ATM あるよ。
はい、ありがとうございます。
番ライナーです。途中の停車駅は大阪上本町、古橋。
I think the biggest thing is that when I was young, I didn't know how to practice properly the way I do now.
Yeah.
Now I know if I could teach myself when I was younger, I think I would reach an even higher level because I know exactly what you have to do to get good. And actually, I'm studying Japanese exactly the same way that I would study music. It's the exact same process. And I've been able to make, I wouldn't say that I speak fluently, but I can get by in day-to-day life in Japanese. I mean, you saw me getting
I
right now.
noticed that.
Yeah.
Yes. So can you say something about the way you approach language study?
So it's the same with music. I do it with a purpose, and the purpose is I live in Japan. So I put myself in situations where there's no choice but to use Japanese. So if I go to a store, there's no choice but to use Japanese. And I try to study what exactly they are saying to me. Like when we went to buy something for your daughter, she was telling all those things. I understood everything. So I would listen very carefully what they say and go back home. And of course, I take lessons. I have a lot of teachers. And I was saying, hey, I went to the store and this person said so-and-so. What does this mean? How does the grammar work? So everything is situational. So when you learn this way, it becomes very, very natural because you have no choice but to use it. And when you have no choice to use it, you're going to get good at it if you keep doing it every day. I think it's the most efficient method to learn anything. If you have to do it, then you have to do it.
The Japanese language works in a very specific way. It is directly tied to the way their entire culture, the way they think, the way they behave. So earlier I was telling you that, if someone asked me, hey Dennis, how do you say this in Japanese? There's no easy translation. I can do a superficial translation, but that's not how Japanese works. If you want to know where the toilet is, you have to figure out first, who are you talking to? What is this person in relation to you? So if you're talking to a store clerk, then you can be a little bit more direct. If you're talking to someone that's just random on the street, you have to use a very specific speech form. And so it's things like that are very, very, very nuanced. So that's what I mean by that. So what I would do, I would come to a place like this every single day to use the exact same phrases all the time. So in the beginning, of course, it doesn't come out cleanly, but now with time, you just repeat every single day. It just flows naturally. You're not even thinking about it. You just know what to say.
And you said it's muscle memory.
Yes, it's muscle memory. So it took me a long time to figure out what this was called because I've heard it many times. It's oshibori. But you forget, but then you get used to it. Then it's now I need to say, can I receive? Yeah. Well, this is masterpiece food. Masterpiece food. Gohan means rice. Rice stuff. There we go. Hokkaido. This means Hokkaido.
So what were you just looking up?
This one.
Because
Ippin. Because I know it without this, but then when you add this, it changes the meaning. It just means masterful, excellence.
You saw me at the restaurant. I was looking at the dictionary because there were some words I want to check. So that's what I do. Everything is a teacher for you when you're in the environment. Yeah, I studied the language exactly the same way I studied the music, or the way I know how to study music nowadays. Because when I was younger, I used to practice a lot, but I didn't know how to practice because there was no one to show me the things that I know nowadays.
I was trying to write what was written there, but I'm not used to like how people write normally. They write very quickly and everything, so it's kind of like, how to say, not always clear to read. So I was practicing reading that.
And if I could teach myself when I was younger, 30 years ago, whatever, I think I could be much better than I actually am right now, but that's okay. But with the knowledge that I have of how to progress, I use that to study languages, Japanese. Yeah. And that's really, it's through the environment. I take advantage of the environment since I live in Japan. Everything is a lesson for me. And I think the best way to learn is if you have to do something, if it's a matter of life and death. So I put myself in situations where I have to speak Japanese because no one else, people in Japan generally don't speak any other language but Japanese. So I go to the restaurant and just order and talk to the staff, at least just to ask them questions about the menu or something like that, and just put myself out there every day in day-to-day life situations. That's the method, yeah. Ah, すいません。
What are you learning?
I know how to read this, but I just want to see like the combination, because kanji can be read in different ways
Uh-huh.
depending on how they're combined.
Okay.
So I just want to confirm.
And so, do you have a feeling you were less happy in Montreal? Not as happy as here?
I wouldn't say I was not happy, but I don't know. It just may feel like a routine, work, and then what? But here, I just I have some really good friends here, hang out. I had some good friends in Canada too, but I don't know, in Montreal, like people move away, and then here I think some of my friends are kind of here to stay for the most part. And really, it's a personal thing, but I really love the atmosphere. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, I think about this almost every day.
Yeah?
Gypsy culture and Japanese culture are complete opposites. And for me, the way I play Gypsy jazz comes from a deep understanding of Gypsy culture. Actually, being with the Sinti has really changed the way I am. Thanks to them, my life is a little more stress-free. You know, Asians, like especially Asian family, my mother is someone who worries a lot. Oh, if we don't do this by this day, it's gonna be like this. She's the kind of person, like the deadline is next year. She will have done it 10 years before I was born. That's my mother. I always make that joke about her, and that's very Asian. But with the Gypsies, like, tomorrow's tomorrow, today is today.
Yeah.
And that's the same. Sometimes my mother even criticizes me, like, why are you so, like, don't care? If something happens, something happens. I'll find another way.
Yeah.
It's a very Sinti way of looking at life.
Yeah.
And that's so I would describe their music, the way they play music is that way as well.
And so, how do you see your future here? What's going to happen?
It's a very good question, because I live here, and as you know, as you realized when you got off the plane, English is practically non-existent. Any other language but Japanese is practically non-existent here. So if you want to have a good life in Japan, I feel you really need to learn Japanese to a certain level, and I want to bring my level as high as I can. So I'm only just studying Japanese now. Eventually, what I'd like to do, of course, is do more music work. But for that, I need a certain level of Japanese. Because like I said, with my level, I could communicate with people, but because it's so tied to the way of thinking, the culture, I need to learn the culturally appropriate way of speaking Japanese to do business here. It's very, very important. And the better you can do this, the more people will be willing to work with you, I feel. That's what I feel. Especially strangers.
What kind of people would you need to work with?
People in the music industry, like more organizers, festival people, things like that, club people. There's a specific speech you have. You can't just say, "Hey, can I play a gig here?" You have to. There's a whole set of templates of phrases that you use. They call this keigo, which business speech, business Japanese.
Wow. Amazing. So you're trying to get your level of Japanese up to the right.
And because also, like I said, that's probably the most important thing about studying Japanese. If you think about it, because as you know, you two speak a number of languages. I also speak a number of languages, and Japanese is so unique in that respect that it's the culture and everything. Think about it: vocabulary, grammar. Every language is kind of hard in that way. You have to learn grammar. You have to learn vocabulary for any language you want to speak.
Yeah.
So that's the same with Japanese. No harder or easier, but it's the culture, and if you understand how the culture works, then you can understand how the language works. For me, it's the same thing with Gypsy jazz, actually.
Yeah.
So another thing I want to say, I would eventually like to find a way to create some kind of business where I can help foreigners get integrated into Japan better, to understand how things work and how to study the language keeping this cultural aspect in mind.
Are you studying?
The first one.
The big yellow?
Ah, of course, I know it already. Like it's the, it's usually spelled other, yeah, izakaya. That's what I told you, the Japanese bistro.
Akaya?
Izakaya.
And what does it mean?
But that's the Japanese bistro I told you about. I took you once there for lunch.
Ah,
Because, as you quickly found out when you came here, people don't really speak anything else but Japanese in Japan. It is, if you want to live here, I personally think it is in your best interest to speak the language as well as possible for so many reasons that are fairly obvious. It's not like Netherlands where you can get away with not speaking Dutch. Even though I think if I would live in the Netherlands, I would still study Dutch. But here in Japan, especially so, it's very, very hard without speaking Japanese. And life is much more enjoyable if you do. So I'm really only studying Japanese.
all you've been doing?
Yes. Mainly all I've been doing, that's and side things, of course. I still play some little gigs here and there, but it's not like, I wouldn't consider that work. It's just like that. 協力お願いします. Cooperation. 協力. I knew that word. Just didn't know how to write it. That's
And
fun.
what about Denis Chang Music School?
This music school, so this is where it gets really hard, you know. I pretty much abandoned my previous life to come here. I abandoned my career, a very, if I can say, successful career, to come here. So I must be crazy. Now I chose life over career. It was a very, very difficult choice. Still is in my mind. I still think about it. If I had, all this is because of the pandemic, of course. It all happened with the pandemic. I felt so frustrated by being stuck for 3 years, not being able to do anything. And I felt 3 years of my life were wasted. And I felt, all right, I'm going to change. I'm going to live in Japan because I love it here. At first, you know, I thought maybe it's just how do you say, fantasy? Like a fetish? Like, not fetish, but like a fantasy. Maybe I'll grow. But to be honest, the more I stay here, every day I feel just very happy to be here. Because I love the atmosphere. It's very, very, very safe. You know, I'm more used to working around the world and traveling with very expensive things, and I always have to have this paranoid attitude, so pickpockets and everything. In Japan, I can just feel so free walking around, leaving my phone anywhere. Sometimes I leave my luggage in a busy mall, go to the toilet, come back, and it's still there. No one will take anything because I'm not saying that crime does definitely exist in Japan, but crime works in another way. But people have an honor system here that's very, very, very dishonorable to steal. If you see like a wallet on the floor, it is extremely dishonorable to take it. Well, you take it, you give it to the police or something. That's what they do. So yeah, that's why I love it here. So it's safe. It's very, very safe. And also, musically speaking, music plays an extremely important role in Japanese society. So there's Gypsy jazz, there's Brazilian music, there's almost every style you can think of in Japan. Now, of course, it comes to like, you know, Brazilian music, jazz, Gypsy jazz, it cannot be the country of origin. But it still exists, and that already is very, very cool. So I feel in those ways everything satisfies my criteria. It was a very difficult choice, but you know, when I'm here, I feel very happy, and it was a difficult choice to make. Career versus happiness. I chose happiness.